So, it's been a long time since I posted here or anywhere on Reddit, but my mother had another encounter, and I figured I would share it. Now, for those who either don't remember or haven't seen my posts, they're about a year or so old now. My ghost brother is not the ghost of any of my family, but a spirit who looks just like my youngest brother. He has been in this house since we moved in. Now then, a few months back, my family was preparing for a visit from another of my brothers and his gef. My dad was planning on making some carne asada, so he took my youngest brother and sister with him to the store, leaving my mother and I home alone. I was sitting in the living room, watching TV, and saw my mother step outside. She was out there for a good half hour, talking to our neighbor and his wife. After what felt like forever, she finally comes back inside, sees me on the couch, and asks what my brother needed. I shrugged and told her I wasn't sure, assuming maybe he had called her on her phone, but she wasn't able to pick up or something. Usually, if she doesn't pick up, they call me. So that's why I made that assumption. She walked to the bottom of the stairs and shouted up for my brother. I got a bit confused and told her, "Mom, he left to the store with Dad. He's not home." She rolled her eyes at me and called for him again, so I repeated myself. Her face changed when she saw I was being serious. She kept asking if I was sure and asking if maybe I saw wrong. I decided to call my dad and put him on speaker for her to hear. I asked him who left to the store with him, and he said both my brother and sister's names. My mum got a bit pale at that, she said. "I swear, I just saw him come to the door. He smiled at me and waved, then walked back inside, so I thought he needed something. I know it was him." I could tell she wasn't lying, and got chills all over when she told me. That's it. I know it's not much, and it's all over the place, but that was another encounter with my ghost brother. It had been some time since we had seen him. This story just happened to me today at work, so I thought to post here as it was definitely freaky. I work in native land care management for backstory, working in Australian bush, mostly doing long line spraying for non-native plants. For some jobs that access is difficult, we will have one long line, up to 400 meters, that will need to be pulled up hills for the person spraying at the end of the line. To communicate, we use handheld walkie-talkie radios, not just the run-of-the-mill cheapo ones, but professional series ones that have coded channels for security, etc., after radioing in to my boss to alert him that we have run out of line. I was met with a faint female voice whispering "angry" twice. Now I work with two older men who do not play pranks, nor could even get their voice to sound remotely like that. Our radio's maximum distance is only 3-4 kilometers, and we are working off a fire track in native bushland with houses being out of signal range. Paired with the coded channels, it would be near on impossible for someone to stumble across us talking and play a prank on us. I've heard of radio waves being able to communicate with ghosts' afterlife, but never experienced it until now. We got a new starter, which is pretty common. He was immediately a bit weird though. I showed him around and went through the motions, but he rarely spoke, and even driving around he would only look forward and wouldn't look left or right to eye anything. Had him drug tested, because I thought old mate was on the gear, but came back negative. The only issue was after what looked discolored I dip tested, and the sample had blood in it. Annoyed pre-employment did not catch it. I referred him to a GP. We continued on, and I pretty much just put him in front of a computer and training videos, etc. Come the third day, old mate did not show, but another new starter arrived. After introductions, he had the same name but was clearly another person. I checked his driver's license, birth certificate, etc., and he had a manila folder with all his info, which made it easy. I did not check the initial as it's just unheard of. We checked the accommodation assigned to the first guy, but it was untouched, and CCTV hoped nothing over the last few days. One of the days showed me dropping him off, but he remained standing on the front lawn for 3 hours, then just walking off. When I was 10 years old, I had a very vivid dream. In my dream, I had woken up because the ground under me was shaking. I opened my eyes and I realized I wasn't in my bed whatsoever. I was in a moving vehicle. There was screaming, but it wasn't coming from me. Confused, I looked around but couldn't move my head. Something was around my neck. Suddenly an arm shot above me, a blue sleeve, a male voice asking me something I couldn't understand. Then I heard it. "Can you hear me? What's your name?" I woke up to the sound of my alarm. Time for the first day of school. In my excitement, I shrugged off the dream and forgot about it completely by the time I was on the bus. A few weeks later, after my 11th birthday, I had stayed home from school because I was so sick. I had started my very first period and was just so woozy. My mum came home from work to find me on the couch, watching Arthur, and she said something along the lines of, "I have to go into the next town over, come with me." A weird sinking feeling in my gut told me it wouldn't end well. But then she said, "We'll grab McDonald's." So off I went in my jammies to find my shoes. Within the next 15 minutes, we were on the way heading north into town. We saw the cars racing on the other side, weaving in between cars, going south, coming towards us. I remember them quite well. A yellow Camaro, a red Mustang GT. The idiots decided to turn quickly at the intersection when our light was still green. My mum stepped on the brake, but it was too late. Everything went black. I opened my eyes to feel the earth under me rattling, to hear the screams I had heard only a few weeks ago. I saw the arm shoot over my head, blue sleeve, reaching for an IV bag. I heard the "Hey, can you hear me? What's your name?" It hit me all at once. I was in an ambulance. I spent the next 8 weeks in recovery at the hospital. Since then, I've never been the same. The summer I was going to turn 14, we did our annual trip to Mexico. My brother would stay behind because he had football and marching band practice to attend all summer. So Mother and I went alone. The main house on my grandparents' ranch was huge. 7 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, 2 living rooms, a huge kitchen and dining area, the washroom, and then a guest house towards the back of it. The first 2 bedrooms were on either side of the foyer as soon as you enter the house. I usually stayed in the left room with the 2 beds with my brother, but since he stayed behind, I stayed in the right one. My mum would be staying in my grandparents' room and my grandpa would be in the guest house. My unmarried uncle stayed in the room by the second living room beside the kitchen. The weeks went by normally. I would hang out with my cousins, riding horses along the trails, helping on the farm, and after they'd come over to the main house, and we'd laugh and help my abuelita cook and make the meals for my grandpa and uncles. Every night was like a family feast. "Can you spend the night again?" I asked my cousins. "No, we have to go to Mass in the morning." I frowned at their answer. "But maybe you can spend the night and we'll drop you off on our way to church," they suggested. I asked my mom. She said no, and my rebellious self went into, "They always spend the night and I never get to. It's unfair. They live right down the road." I had screamed at her, in front of the whole family. I didn't care. I marched to my bedroom, slammed the door closed, and laid on the bed. Between being exhausted from working on the farm, the heat of the summer, and the only air coming in through the window, I watched the breeze blow through, slightly moving the curtain back and forth, swaying softly side to side. I awoke to the sound of my door opening the closing, the sound of cowboy boots walking on the tile flooring, spurs softly jingling. I heard the sound of the springs of the bed and felt it sink under the weight of someone. Then it was dead silence. No chirping of crickets, no farm noises. Through the light of the moon entering the room, I saw the silhouette of a man sitting there, on the edge of my bed, elbows on his knees. He wore a cowboy hat and a trench coat. How odd. A trench coat on the middle of July? Well, it was unnecessarily cool right now. In fact, it was cold. Thinking it was one of my uncles coming in to talk to me about the argument I had with my mother, I sat up on my elbows. "Hey, Tio," I said, greeting my uncle. "Que paso? What's up?" That's when the smell really hit me. It wasn't the smell of the farm, it was something else entirely. A dead animal, maybe. The bed squeaked under his weight as he leaned closer to me slowly, and that's when I really saw him. Not any of my uncles, but someone else. Someone dead, decaying. Lips stuck to his rotten teeth. "Agua," he whispered, his hot, putrid breath over my face. I screamed, louder than I have ever screamed in my entire life. I sprang out of bed, turned on the light switch and ran as fast as my legs could carry me to my grandma's room. My mom there with her. "What's wrong?" they asked, as I jumped in bed between them, grabbing the blankets, begging them to hold me. Just hold me. They did. It was just a bad dream. I sobbed. About 11 years later, at my cousin's bonfire, my cousins and I were sitting around it, telling ghost stories. And I told them this one. My cousin Ray stared at me the entire time, eyes wide. While we were putting everything up, he came up to me. "Do you remember when I disappeared?" he asked. "Yeah, you ended up at the ranch," I replied. "Yeah, I went to detox," he explained. Proud of him quitting drugs and going to find solace the only place he knew where, he had come back rehabilitated. Well, I saw him, in the same room, but I thought I had been withdrawing. You know. You hallucinate sometimes, but this hallucination wasn't like the rest of them, because I smelled him too. He said with a look on his face that told me I hadn't been dreaming any of it.